Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and welcome to our podcast that delves deep into everything associated with the genre of horror, no matter what decade it was from, and no matter what subgenre it's from, whether it be comedy horror, sci-fi horror, fantasy horror. We kind of take a little bit of time to delve deep into each one of the subgenres, especially this year, as one of our mandates for this podcast is to touch upon all of the types of different horror films out there that haven't been touched upon by a lot of other podcasts. Now, as we venture off in these uncharted waters this year, we hope that you'll join us because we want to be able to bring you some amazing conversations between me and my special guest. And special guests will be different every week, so every week you're going to get a new person who's going to talk with me about these almost random horror films. So the good thing about this is that it gives you a different perspective other than mine on some of the great horror films out there, or infamous horror films, because we don't always do the most famous horror films. We do try to do a little bit of the less liked horror films and the less known horror films in order to give you another look at some of the films that you may or may not be appreciative of. So with today's podcast, we're going to delve into an anthology film. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but it's Kwaidan. And to talk about this film with me today is Thomas Tittarello. He's one of our special guests who we love to have on the show. So thank you, Thomas, for joining me on this conversation.
Thank you, Kevin, and konnichiwa.
So we don't do a lot of anthology films on there, and we try to this year we're going to try to delve deeper in those, and we're also going to try to do a month where we kind of dedicate some of our special shows to anthology films. But this one here holds a very interesting place in our social circles because it is a well-regarded anthology film, like one of the most talked about not only anthology films but also Japanese films in general. So we're glad to be talking about this, and if you've never seen this film, we hope that you will enjoy this conversation so that you will go out there and seek it out, because we all think that it is actually a film worth seeking out and enjoying. So
and we're not the only ones who think that. This movie is part of the Criterion Collection.
Yes, it is.
So
there's an amazing version out there for you to watch and to find.
Yes, it's and funny thing about this, like you said, Dave, what you said is correct, that it is not just seen as one of the classic horror films. It's seen as one of the classic Japanese films, period. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the Japanese, unlike us, or should I say, unlike the American, well, let's just say a certain institution that hands out golden statues, the Japanese, however, seem to appreciate horror and see it as equal genre footing with its dramas and its social realist, war movies and such like that. It gives them the respect it deserves, and it's been doing it since the 50s and the 60s, which is when this movie was released.
Yeah. So, so this is an anthology film. So everyone who's listening, we're going to kind of go through each of one of the stories in the anthology. And thankfully, this is not like a modern day anthology where there is a wraparound sequence, so we don't have to worry about that. Each of the stories are its own individual story. So we're going to go through each one of the stories to give you a better idea of our thoughts on the film, each individual story itself and the film as a whole. So with that, we're going to start with the very first segment of the film, which is the black hair.
So yeah, and we should probably tell people what it is. Really, I mean, it's a collection of Japanese ghost stories.
Yes, those. Yeah, there you go. The most obvious thing we should tell people.
Yes. Yeah, that is what it is. I mean, we can't explain the plot because there really isn't one. It is. I mean, that's what an anthology is. It's a collection of different short stories. But this collection, you were right by saying you pronounced it correctly. It is called Kwaidan, but really it's Kaidan, because the title of the book on which this movie is based was mistransliterated from the word Kwaidan with a W. So the author messed up, and as a result, that's what they've called it for 100 years. And the author himself was not Japanese. He was an Italian guy named Lafcadio Hearn. I'm sorry, Lafcadio Hearn. Probably the guy whose name I will the most tonight. Maybe. But so Hearn he immigrated to the United States and then decided to immigrate to Japan and became a Japanese citizen. He became as Japanese as he could possibly do without speaking Japanese. Could read and write Japanese very well. He wrote several books in Japanese, but by all accounts, he never fully learned to speak the language. He left that to his Japanese wife, who also edited his books. But the word Kwaidan has come to be, because of this movie, become synonymous with Japanese ghost stories. And we think that it just means ghost stories, but it's not actually true. Kwaidan, the word really means strange tales. So it's really kind of a blanket term meaning tales that any tale that involves the supernatural, curses, gods, witches, or just weird experiences. Anything that's set in a heightened dreamlike reality, those are Kwaidan. That's all Kwaidan. I mean, really, technically speaking, some Godzilla movies classify as Kwaidan because if they involve anything supernatural or weird, I guess Godzilla versus a smog monster, which would be a Kwaidan. Anything with Mothra would be Kwaidan. So yeah, that's what genre this movie is. So I used to call it J horror, and it is because that's what J in J horror means. It means Japanese horror. But don't go into this, ladies and gentlemen, expecting to see a 3-hour version of The Ring. That is not what this is. This is I would say just like think of this in the same vein as say, well, Mario Bava's Black Sabbath. That's a different movie altogether. Black Sunday. Think of this like in the same kind of genre as Black Sabbath or other Japanese horror-ish titles from that time, like Onibaba or The Black Cat or Ugetsu. Things like that. Also. Yeah, that's it. All of which, by the way, are also on the Criterion Collection. So yeah, that's where this comes from, and we'll get into more of who the creator was and why he was drawn to this material and why it is the only horror movie he ever made.
Well, I would like to add from what you said already that the thing that sets this apart from a lot of other films, and like you say, it will set you apart from any modern day J horror, is its dreamlike quality. Each one of the stories presented has a dreamlike quality that almost borders on fantasy and horror together, which is what I love about the movie. It makes it really visually different than other types of anthology films, and it sets it apart. It's not trying to be realistic.
Are you frozen?
Huh? Oh, no, you should be fine.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
I think I lost you, bud.
No, if I'm frozen, it's on your end. I can still hear you.
All right, I'm in. I'm back.
As long as you can hear me and I can hear you, you're good.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. You were totally frozen.
Oh, that sucks. But if everyone out there, sometimes we have technical difficulties. This is recorded on Zoom for everyone who didn't already know. So yes, sometimes we have technical difficulties, but we'll get back to the film. If you missed it, we were talking about the dreamlike qualities of this film, which sets it apart from other anthology films, and we'll get into those as those elements themselves with each one of the stories as we talk about them. So we're going to step into the first story, which is the black hair, and we'll discuss that one first before moving on to any of the other ones.
And what was your first, like, your origin story with this movie too?
With me, I actually ended up studying this movie or coming across it in film school. That's where I heard about this film. Because in film school, I studied horror, noir films, and animation were my focus. and that's where I got my love into foreign horror films and foreign films in general. I hadn't really delved into any type of foreign films unless it was Godzilla or Ultraman when I was a kid. It
Yeah.
took college, and then my whole world was opened up. I came across everything from Run Lola Run. Like that's when I saw that at the theater, not knowing what I was getting into before I watched it. That one, and I saw a ton of them, like the red, blue, white cycle of films. I saw those all at the theater when I was in college. I just got into foreign films across the board, and that's where I heard about this one because this one was talked about so fondly by generally everybody.
Oh. So I took a world cinema course when I was at St. Petersburg College, but my professor, he wasn't snobby, but like he didn't show any. Did he show us any Japanese movies at all? I'm starting to think maybe he didn't. He didn't even show us Seven Samurai, but I remember he showed us like My Darling Concubine or something from China, and I hated that freaking movie. But anyway, yeah, I had a world cinema course, but I'm so glad that yours at least put this in there because that's a well-rounded education.
I lucked out. We had what we call film genres classes up at Georgia State University, and whoever was teaching it would teach whatever genre that they loved. So I took it several different times, and one of the times my professor went over Sam Peckinpah, Sam Fuller, and I forget the other person.
His genre was director's name Sam. I guess that was his thing.
Yes, but I had never seen Sam Peckinpah or Samuel Fuller movies until I took his class. I didn't even know who the hell he was, and now both of them are on my list of all-time favorite directors. I have a huge collection of their movies now.
Well, that sounds great. So the first time I encountered this movie was probably on the DVD shelves of Best Buy, a thing of a bygone era. And it was one of those things where like I saw the cover. And the cover in that version had Hirochi the earless with the young monk Hirochi, who with his face covered in Sanskrit symbols, the black Sanskrit lines. And I thought, there's something weirdly disturbing and enigmatic about that image. I don't know what it is. Because like, even though I didn't know what the heck was the context, there was something, I don't know, like I knew something was very wrong. There's a reason, like there's some kind of something demonic or something supernatural is going on in that image, and like I don't know, and mystical, and it called to me. But I think I may have actually picked it up and looked at the back and read maybe a little bit of it and then put it away because it was too expensive and I couldn't buy it. That was probably the the 2 hour and 45 minute or 2 hour and 40 minute version that I later saw on the Independent Film Channel. Now, the Independent Film Channel, or IFC, they're still around as a brand. I don't know if they're actually still around as a channel that plays actual independent films. Because I don't have real cable, so I don't know. But IFC used to be a real source for Japanese cinema. That's where I saw some really obscure. I think it's where I saw Ringu, the original Japanese The Ring. That's also where I saw a very obscure Japanese horror movie called Ghost Actress, otherwise known as Don't Look Up. So they had like a marathon of these Japanese ghost story movies, and I actually recorded this version of Kwaidan with Ghost Actress and I think another movie, and I called it just Japanese Ghost Stories Tape. And whenever I was in the mood for that, I just popped that sucker right in, and it was great. So IFC also used to have this thing that I miss now. They had a thing called Samurai Saturdays, and every Saturday morning they would play a different samurai movie. And I think after a while they ran out of samurai movies, and they started just playing Blind Swordsman Zatoichi movies. And there's 50 of those, so they just I started recording those too, and it was great.
Well, just so you know, you can now get all of those films from Criterion Collection now too.
I know, and a box set that's like $150. I'm like,
Yeah, I have it. I have not delved into that box set yet. I got it when Criterion Collection had their 50% off sale.
But I thought Kwaidan was haunting. No
Oh
pun
yes.
intended. Pun intended. And it inspired me. Like I wanted to make a ghost anthology film. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wrote like an outline for an anthology film that I wanted to create when I was in my late 20s, and I called it Apparitions. And it would be like different ghost stories, and one of them was like going to be like an adaptation, a loose adaptation of. No, it wasn't even going to be an adaptation. It was just like a thing that homaged
Yeah.
the fourth story, and we'll get into that later because, like, oh my gosh, like seeing that was like a memory lock. I completely forgotten about that story that I wrote, but like this thing is this film is like there's really nothing like it. It doesn't really give you the horror thrills per
Yeah.
se, although there is violence. It's not bloody. There are ghosts, but they're not very human. Like then maybe the killer long black hair ghost is an exception. Um, there's even a bit of tasteful nudity in the 3 hour version. It's not like anything at the time. This is a cinema first. I feel like this is a it's art, but it's not it's art, but it's not art house horror. If that makes any sense,
Yeah.
which is a term, but I think that term is kind of almost as meh as elevated horror. I don't really like that term anymore. But like this thing sucked me in and mystified me, and it still mystifies me. There's just something about Japanese ghost stories that are that get into my brain in a way that other cultures' ghost stories don't.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, I'll tell you my favorite Japanese ghost story. It's very short, um, but it's very creepy. The guy goes into a guy goes into the country, and meets this woman who's very beautiful. But then as he follows her, he finds out that she puts her hand over her face and covers it, and there's no face anymore. And he screams, "Ah!" And he runs away, and then he goes into a bar in town, and he tells the bartender, "Hey, bartender, I just met this woman in this country, and at first she was beautiful, but then she put her hand over her face, and she had no face. I think she was a demon." And then the bartender looks at him and goes, "Ha, what, you mean like this?" And he puts his hand over his face, and there's no face. And he screams and runs out of the bar. He runs out of the town, and he finally runs all the way back home, back to his own house, back to his wife, and he crawls into his bed, and his wife's next to him. And he's like, "Honey, what happened? Why are you so afraid?" And he's like, "Oh, honey, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. I went into the country, and I found this lady, and she had no face. And then I went to the city, and there was another man in the bar, and he didn't have any face either. But thank God, I'm finally home with you." And she goes, "Oh, what, you mean like this?"
You could do that. Into a creepy little film. But and that would be similar to the feeling that you would get from these films. It very or these vignettes for this too, because they're not horrifying, but they're creepy and they're eerie. And I'm sure that at the time period when this was made, it scared a lot of people because these were ghost stories. And unlike our culture, ghost stories are terrifying to the Japanese back in that time period, which is why there were so
Yeah.
many of them. So, but
Oh yeah. But also with this film, I feel like is elevates it above kind of the typical J horror because of the director.
okay,
And Masaki Kobayashi was known more for social realist dramas. He made a whole that was about the human, and he made like 10 of them, and they're all like 4 hours long or something like that. But they're supposed to be amazing and like gut wrenching and beautiful. He's also very famous for a samurai movie called Harry Carey,
yep.
where yes, someone commits Harry Carey at the end.
At the end,
But it's also supposed to be amazing. Also in black and yeah, Kevin's seen it. He knows it's great.
yeah.
Also in black and white. And these are all fairly low budget movies too. But at this point in his career, Masaki had made these like very socially conscious, movies. Like even Harry Carey, was very much had lots of political overtones and things to them. And what surprised me is that when I listened to the special features on this movie and the Criterion set, is that this movie is also really political. This movie also has tons of political subtext to it, and it's kind of a masterclass in subtext and how you can be somebody who is all about social change and all about social, like, kitchen sink type dramas, and then do something that's on the surface seems like a complete rejection of all of that, is actually very much in line with every other thing he's made, except for one minor detail: the fact that this movie has twice the budget, maybe 3 times the budget, maybe 4 times the budget of what he made before, and is also in color. And he never made another horror movie, and he never made another movie in color because this movie was a financial disaster.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, in Japan, it did not make its money back at all.
Wow. That's actually kind of sad to hear.
Yeah, I mean in Japan it is regarded as a classic now.
Yeah.
But at the time they spent way too much money on this movie, and it's all on the screen.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It is all on the screen.
Yeah, especially during, I mean, a huge part of that is the fact that when you watch this movie, you realize that more than half of it is on a soundstage.
Yes.
Even the outside stuff is on a soundstage, and the sound stages they used were gigantic, the biggest that he could have in Japan. But Kobayashi was very precise and exacting and everything, so he did not. In fact, I think I read somewhere where the studio sent somebody to watch him and try to figure out how to get him to, rein in the spending, and he basically chased the guy off the set or something like that. I don't know. I wrote it down, but it was a funny story where, like, he basically wouldn't play nice with the studio.
Well, you can definitely in the first 2 stories, the black hair and the woman of the snow, because the black hair has that amazing set of the house that Kyoto was originally lives in. He leaves and he comes back and he's wandering through this amazing set piece, because you didn't see all this at the very beginning. You just see parts of it at the very beginning. But when he comes back, his old home is in ruins. It's a derelict. Oh my God, it's huge.
It is. It's gigantic. And it just gets bigger. The scope of this movie just gets bigger and bigger with each thing, except for I think they go down a little bit for the last one. The last one gets a little more intimate. Yeah. But I do think the last one, In a Cup of Tea, is the scariest one.
Yeah. You know what? I might have to agree with you on that one, because as much as I love the woman of the snow, the black hair is creepy, but because that's the story I was most familiar with, because I've seen it done in other Japanese movies. So for everyone out there who's never seen this movie, the black house, black hair, and you'll recognize the story. Very familiar. It's a trope that gets used a lot in Japanese. You have this warrior guy, Kyoto, who leaves his wife for more money and a bigger position, with a rich family, leaves his wife behind, and he goes and he gets married to this rich man's daughter, and then gets stationed at a town, and he becomes more or less, he's stationed there for a certain amount of years, but he hates his wife. The life of his wife is not what he was expecting. She's selfish. He just doesn't love her. They have no kids. And then, of course, eventually when that station is up at that new town, he leaves and returns back to his first wife, which he wishes he had never left. But when he gets there, the house that he thought he was poor in with his first wife is this massive building, a derelict, that he walks through, and it looks like it's a maze or a labyrinth, and it's really intricately designed. And then, of course, he finds her, and one of the things that his wife tells her is, or tells him, is that he found her when she's the only thing there, but he doesn't realize anything's wrong.
Yeah, she hasn't aged a day, it seems.
Yeah,
there's an implication that he's been gone for years.
Yeah,
and she still looks the same. And she just like hugs him. He's like, "Oh, I'm so glad I've been waiting for you for so long. I'm so glad to have you back now, even if it's just for a little while." And of course he's like, "Wait, what?" And she's like, "No, keep with me." And the implication is, they bed down and do and yeah, do the thing you do.
You do.
But he wakes up the next morning, and that's when things get really horrifying.
Yeah.
Next to a mummified corpse.
Yeah, he searches for a while, but when he goes to that derelict, it's really it's creepy. The way that the director uses the shadows in that freaking derelict house is like, wow. I mean, don't get me wrong. Because it was done on a soundstage, the backgrounds are amazing for this.
Oh yeah, some of the backgrounds like draw attention to the fact that they are painted.
Yeah, they're painted, but that's what adds to the dreamlike quality of each one of the segments. It's like it's even more profound than how you say Ichi the earless. I've always pronounced that one wrong. So Ichi the earless. That one's because you're looking at the paintings of the battle sequence, and it's cut with like them reenacting it, and the backgrounds for the reenactments are very dreamlike quality. I mean, it's something that's seen in each one of the segments, except for I don't think it's done a lot in A Cup of Tea. I didn't seem to make comment on that one.
There's more. I think there's more locations shots in that one. I mean, mark my words, there are real outdoor trees. There are real locations a little bit in this movie. They do use them sometimes, but not a lot.
Yeah, I think it was part of the style, though. I think the style of the movie is like we're shooting on some sound stages to make it automatically artificial, but dream.
Yeah.
And that is very prevalent in the black hair, which is which is creepy. I had forgotten why it was called the black hair until I rewatched it. I was like, why is this one called the black hair?
Because the black hair attacks him.
Yeah,
it's like killer. This is the original long black haired ghost from Japanese cinema. It really is, except the hair itself is alive.
Yeah, and I had forgotten that until I watched it. I was like, oh yeah, that's why.
That's why. But yeah, so it's probably, I mean, for me, it wasn't just the visuals that distract from the fact that this is basically a killer wig at some point, but the fact that the sound is what stays with me from that segment, because the sound effects of the creaking wood, always get me. And like one day I hope to like make a film where I could just like straight up lift that sound and just put it in something, because it gets into your brain. And so you were talking about the shots of the house. Oh. I did not notice how much of a motif, like the way Kobayashi uses the camera and the way he stages and blocks them is indicative of the way that he sees the world in a metaphorical and literal way. Because on the behind the scenes stuff, it says that they said that so the long tracking shot that starts this movie of the decaying house, it's from it's an overhead shot. And there's tons of overhead shots in this movie. I didn't realize, but it's to keep doing it over and over again. This almost not quite a God's eye view, but just like, say, maybe a guy in a 2-story platform looking down. And the reason why is because apparently Kobayashi, when he was a boy, looked down on things and like people from a mountain where he lived. He lived down in the mountains when he was a kid. And he said in his biography that looking down on things from a mountain was soothing to him. So for him, this movie is about a lot of things, but one of the main things is that this idea of the blending of the supernatural world and the real world. And for Kobayashi, the supernatural world looking down on the human world is represented by that camera, by that God's eye view, or in this case, God's plural. And let's just say that in Kobayashi's view, if you think about it, the supernatural world is, for the most part, malevolent.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, and that's kind of the thing. It's much more so in him, and this goes with the political stuff. But one thing I like about Japanese ghost stories in particular is that there's almost never the benevolent ghost who just needs to solve their problem. They just need to finish their unfinished business and move on to the light. You don't get that in Japanese ghost stories, because in Japanese ghost stories, 9 times out of 10, the ghosts want to kill you. Or if they don't want to kill you or get revenge on you, or, have sex with you and leave you the next morning and attack you with their long black hair, like in the case of this first story, if they don't want to do any of that, guess what? Just being around them is going to kill you.
Yeah.
Because there's this thing in Japanese folklore called ghost sickness, which you see that in Hirochi the Earless, where just being around them for a prolonged period of time will eventually make you sick, and you'll eventually die from it. So there is no benevolent ghosts in any of this. They're all bad.
Yeah, well, you bring it up, and that's one of the big things about the Woman of the Snow. The ghost in there, the only reason why she allows that the one boy to live is because she finds something interesting about him, but she just kills her or kills his I think it's his father, just freezes him to death with no reason. Just these are 2 woodcutters in the second story who are just out there doing what they normally do, cut some wood to survive. And they come across a ghost spirit, and she just kind of freezes one of them to death, and it lets the other one live. And then, of course, that leads to other things, because I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but I can't remember if we have a name for him or not.
I don't know. I always thought of like the Woman of the Snow as kind of like this kind of proto-vampire figure, and I felt like instead of freezing him to death, I feel like she like sucked out his warmth from his body. That's
I can see that.
Yeah, and that maybe that's why. And I think they delve into this in the commentary a little bit too, and that's why. Spoilers for this 70-year-old movie. That's why she becomes human and marries the survivor and lives with him. Also, for us Western eyes, it's a little bit more of a surprise because a lot of these women look kind of alike. But for Japanese audiences, it's pretty obvious what happens. It's not a twist. Like, it's pretty clear that this is the same woman.
Yeah.
But I mean, she does have makeup on. She does have this weird kind of white pasty face makeup on. And so, and also, fun fact, and this is very clear if you watch the thing, when the twist happens, this movie's, this segment, which is based on a very, very old Japanese folk tale that was compiled. It's probably the oldest story in Lafcadio Hearn's collection of Kwaidan. Like, every school kid in Japan knows the story of the Woman of the Snow. It's been done in so many different ways, so many different movies in Japanese culture. Everybody knows it. In fact, y'all out there, horror fans, already know it if you've watched Tales from the Dark Side of the movie, because guess what? Tales from the Dark Side of the movie ripped this story off and remade it, except with gargoyles instead of a ghost vampire snow woman.
Yeah, I was wondering. I always wanted to was going to get to that, but you got to it first.
It is literally the exact same story, and they never credit anybody else, which ticks me off a little bit. But yeah, the same thing happens. Like, he doesn't get that it's the same woman, and the woman makes him promise to not tell anybody about me.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody that you saw me. And then, and this is more, and I feel like their life together is a lot more full in the 3-hour version. The 3-hour version, you get to see them together. You get to see how the other women in the village react to her and notice that there's something strange about her and how they talk about her. But she doesn't pay attention to any of that. She just wants to live like a normal human and has kids with him. And just so happens one night, and the way that Kobayashi builds tension to this reveal is so deep. Like, and also the way he blocks the scene, like she's on a slightly elevated platform than him in their house, which instantly kind of shows you like she's on a higher plane than him. Why? Because she's a ghost. Because she's part of the spiritual world. And the spiritual world trying to interconnect with the human world is, again, what this is all about. But in this case, when he breaks his promise, he breaks his vow and tells her that he saw the woman of the snow, she instantly reverts back to her spirit form. And instead of killing him like they do in the Tales from the Dark Side version, she gives him a fate worse than death. She says, now you get to take care of my children for the rest of your life. And if I find out that you're not making them happy at all, I will come back for you. And the implication is I will kill you. And I am watching you always. Which figures into Hirochi the Earless. Actually, no, it figures into this story because the backdrops.
Yes, I was about to tell you about the backdrops all have the eyes as though they're all staring at, especially in the beginning where it's a snow-covered backdrop, or snow-covered ground, which is obviously fake snow, but it looks beautiful on screen. And these really elaborately painted backdrops that all look like there's eyes watching them.
Yes.
I love the visuals for this story. Love the visuals for this story. I never get tired of this one.
And those visuals are basically Kobayashi putting in the political element to it. Because this movie is about surveillance. This movie is about what it's like to live under a totalitarian fascist theocracy.
Always being watched.
Always being watched by beings who are on a higher plane than you are. It's like Kobayashi is taking the theocracy that was Shintoist Japan before World War II, and he spiritualizes it and turns them into the gods, the evil spirits of these stories that were folklore for ages, and says that, look, your government was like these ghosts. Let's not let that ever happen again. Because they're watching you always. You have no freedom. And in this poor guy's case, he's stuck in a lifetime of servitude, which is a fate worse than death.
Yeah. And this is a guy he's a simple guy just trying to survive. He's literally his job is just wood cutting and selling that just to survive. Like he's not like he's a normal person, but even normal people are being observed and watched. And it's an eerie story, but it was one of my favorites. It's the one I always remembered.
And apparently, like the big eyes in the sky thing was actually a motif for government surveillance during the Shintoist regime with the imperial, because they had this thing called the peace police during that time, which were basically thought police during the war. If you made seditious art, or you were thought of doing anything that was going to be against the emperor or the government there, you were disappeared by the peace police because they had to keep the peace.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Kobayashi was doing that. And I think that Japanese audiences, many of whom, of course, were obviously still alive during that regime that were watching this movie, they probably would have noticed the eye motif and thought, I think they would have got it pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, especially considering the director's other movies before this, I think they would have too.
Oh yeah, faux show.
Yeah.
So sure. And another thing about the style of this movie, we should probably mention, is like in Japan, they have this kind of um well, there's like several traditions of Japanese art. I think look, this particular artist before this Kobayashi, before he became a director, he was a painter.
Oh.
So, and you could see that this movie feels like a painting, and he stages a lot of the action like a painting. He uses the x-axis a lot. There's not a lot of depth to his staging. It's meant to look artificial and meant to look like a painting a lot of times.
Yeah.
And in fact, in Japanese art, there's this thing. There's this thing called, I wasn't able to pronounce the Japanese word for it. Basically, it says this philosophy that in visual art, the way something looks is to be despised in favor of how the art makes you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And what it means under the surface. So they value the emotional impact and the subtext, which for Kobayashi, that's why he stages it the way he does. That's why everything looks so surreal and otherworldly. But that's also why sometimes the sound choices he makes are weird, because even the sound in this movie is about that disconnect. There's sounds that are out of sync. Why? That's deliberate. He didn't mess that up. The sound out of sync is to show you that there is a break between the material world and the spiritual world that he's exploring. So it's not just the visuals, it's everything is all about this mixing together and this disconnect of two different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that without being super obvious about it. He's a little more obvious to Japanese people, but to us, it's just like, this is like a movie from Mars.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
So I guess we're going on to the next story, right?
Yep. Ichi the Earless, only because you mentioned the thing about painting, which is a huge portion of the movie.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Painting and music are a big part of Hirochi the Earless, which I think is the longest story. By the way, I do love the 4-story format. I almost always found about you, Kevin, but I always kind of sort of feel cheated by the trilogy format of anthologies.
I do.
I don't know why. You do?
I do, because I was so used to watching Creepshow as an anthology film, and that's 5 stories. So when it went to 3 stories, I kind of felt cheated, because it was like, oh, they can get away with doing movies that are less than 90 minutes or just at 90 minutes. And I always felt cheated because Creepshow is longer than that. And I'm like, I like my anthology, it had more impact. And if you have like 1 or 2 stories that aren't that good in a 3-film anthology, like some of the films in the VHS franchise,
Yeah.
they're not all that good. You might have one out of the entire film that's a great one, and the rest of them, I feel cheated. So.
Yeah, and with 4, I feel like you have a bigger chance of having more good movie for your buck. If one of them's bad, you at least got 3 that are good. If 2 of them are bad, well, at least you got half a good movie. You know what I mean? So I feel like it works better that way. Now, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. All 4 of these stories are freaking bangers. I mean, make no mistake, they're all great.
Yes,
but but I feel like the last 2, Hirochi and In a Cup of Tea, are probably the best of the best of the best. And Hirochi's the longest and the most visually sumptuous.
Yes.
If you could get this on Blu-ray, get it on a big TV, and just let the colors wash over you. So a little bit of backstory. This particular story, again, very old, but it is based on a true story. This naval battle that they talk about in this movie, that's like the central backstory to the ghosts in this movie, is is a story that is really well known to Japanese school kids. Everybody knows about the Genji and Heike. I'm just gonna say the Genji and the Heike clan battle. It's like it's hard to kind of say what the equivalent would be in American history. I guess I don't know what other great naval battles every freaking school kid know about. I guess the Battle of Midway. In World War II, the Battle of Midway, the turning point of the Battle of the Pacific Theater in World War II. This battle was also the turning point. Now, when I say naval battles, the Japanese did boats a little differently than most cultures did in 1180 AD when this battle took place. So this is like the early Middle Ages. They had boats, but these boats did not have sails. They were not gigantic. They were basically just like really long canoes. And some of them were a little bit bigger and had a second layer on it where the emperor or the general could sit. And they had nothing on them to attack the other boat except guys with long spears and guys with flaming arrows. That's it.
Yeah, but that makes for a very visually really cool battle scene in this movie.
When it is like that. Like as soon as the ships get up next to each other, which by the way, there is water and lots of fog, lots of friggin' fog in this movie, and it's like a huge. I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of extras in full costume, and with these huge flags on them, and they just use their spears to stab at each other and prick at each other, and as soon as they die, their bodies fall into the water, and they die, and it's like they die by the hundreds, and all the time the song of this battle is playing. Most of the time, you don't even hear any sound; it's just the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the music, and smoke. Like I said, lots and lots of smoke.
Now, I will say this about the music: this one uses music and sound effects to probably the greatest effect in the whole film, but the entire film in each one of the segments does an amazing job with the sound effects themselves.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes. Oh yeah. This movie is a masterclass in how to use sound to not only set mood, build suspense, but sound as atmosphere, sound as, like I said, like enforcing the themes in ways that you can't even describe. Consciously. Speaking of music, the main musical instrument that the music comes from in this segment also happens to be the musical instrument that the main character plays. It's a Japanese musical instrument called the biwa, which is kind of like a 2 or 3 string guitar-ish thing that you play with this huge pick thing that's shaped like a triangle, I think. And you just bong, pluck it, bong, bong. And apparently, I'm not sure if it's because of this story or if because of this traditional belief that the story was written, but in Japanese culture, the biwa was used as a musical instrument in exorcisms.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was traditionally used to placate restless spirits. In fact, there is a motif in Japanese folklore that biwa was played by Buddhist monks to placate evil spirits, and especially blind Buddhist monks, which is just like the main character in the story is a blind Buddhist monk named Hirochi. The difference here is that the monk doesn't know that he's dealing with ghosts.
Yeah.
So, and I mentioned before, there are several versions of this movie. The version that was released originally, so the director's cut that comes on the Criterion version is 3 hours long. So if y'all have time, just block it out for 3 hours. It's a longie. Not, I mean, horror is usually better shorter, but this is one instance where this movie needs to take its time. And if you can find it, just watch the 3-hour version. If you have HBO Max, that's the version they have.
Oh, is that really?
Yes, I'm almost certain that is the version because I remember checking when I still had HBO Max that is the version that they have because HBO Max uses the Criterion edition. But when I was a kid or when I was in college, I watched the 2 hour and 40-minute version.
Mm-hmm.
That was the version you could get in America for the longest time. But it's still truncated. This version loses a lot of the ship battle in that version. Even more of it probably in the hour and 45-minute version, which, by the way, turns the quadrilogy into a trilogy. The Woman of the Snow segment was completely cut from that version.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and that was the first American subtitled version that came to the United States in 1965-ish, I think. So yeah, people went. So like this movie, like I said, was not successful in Japan when it first came out, but a lot of its success here in the States had to do with that really truncated version that got really popular amongst the art house crowd here in America, who was discovering, Kurosawa's movies, who was discovering, a lot of all the great Japanese directors from Japan, like Kobayashi. That's probably the same time that Harry Carey came over to the States. So, unfortunately, it's only until the last 20 years or so that we're finally able to watch the full version of this masterpiece. And by the way, but before we move on a little bit more, like I said, this story is very popular, very well known to Japanese boys and girls everywhere. It's also seen as like it's also a folktale, even though it's an actual historical event. It's seen as the explanation as to why a particular species of crab exist.
Oh, you're gonna mention that? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a weird thing about like there's the what do they call it? The Heike. Yes, so the Heike is the clan that lost this battle. This battle was the turning point of the shogunate in Japanese history. Like from here on in, it was the death of the old empire. Like the emperor of Japan. After this, it was just the shogunates who ruled Japan, these feudal lords who kind of warred over the kingdom for the rest of the Middle Ages until, feudal and until the World War II era, when they went back to the emperor and had their, horrible fascist theocracy. But this was that turning point battle. And after that, people started noticing these things they called the Heike crabs, because on their bodies is a human face. And it's similar to the human face of the Heike that's on the banner of the Heike crab, the Heike clan. So it is thought that the crabs look that way because of all of the dead Heike soldiers who were in the water in that particular bay.
That's some unusual stuff there.
Yeah. Like supposedly there's so many people who died in that battle that the water was turned red with their blood.
Yeah. But the thing is, I would like to say this about the whole battle sequence. The battle sequence, when the way it is edited with the actual painting, is simply, and the music that plays behind it is phenomenal. This is why this story right here is such. And I love the Woman in the Snow, the second story, but this one right here visually is visually stunning. And when it gets to the story with Ichi, who's not earless at the beginning, he's blind. What happens to him is tragic. But the whole the graveyard that Ichi goes to play for this noble person that he doesn't realize they're all dead is like, it's an amazing set piece. And I think the backdrop behind this, I think the graveyard, the backdrop is the only thing that may in this one, it may be like a painted one. It doesn't seem that, I think that's the only dreamlike quality really that I could think of.
Yeah, it is, because he goes from his natural world that has real, into the supernatural world that is unreal and painted. And it's like the inciting incident though is they find a dead body. Mm-hmm. They find a dead person washed up by the waters, these fishermen, and they think that the ghost did it, basically. I think those guys might be cut out of the 2.5 hour, the 2.5 hour version. But yeah, they see that, and then they go to this monastery where Hirochi, the local biwa playing monk, who plays his biwa for the monks there, he gets called by this ghost samurai to come play for his lord. And he's like, okay, I'll go. And he goes, and not realize, and it's a long build up to the cemetery that is then the ruins of this palace. There's no like roof. It's just like, it's mostly just empty sky back there. And then it changes when you see will-o-wisps around him. Which I think was
thank you. I couldn't remember what the heck they were called. Thank you. Sorry.
It is the only Japanese horror, thing I've ever seen, and one of the few ghost movies I've ever seen that actually portrays will-o-wisps. They are like dangling around him, and it's an amazing effect because I cannot see the strings.
Yeah,
I've seen this movie in high definition. You can't see them dangling on strings. They look like these burning torches that fly through the air around him. And they presage the coming of the human specters of the Heike clan and their dead emperor, this young boy who wants to hear him play the biwa. And he does. But like we said before, the problem is the longer you're around ghosts in Japanese folklore, the deader you're going to get. And poor Hiroshi just starts feeling sick. And the people in the monastery notice it. And that's when they start to question what does he do, where he goes. And what happens after that? I somehow they figure out what's going on, and the monk, there's the head of the order, says, Hiroshi, here's the only thing you have to do now is there's samurai's going to come back for you to take you back again, because he's doing this night after night after night. He's like, you need to pray from the Book of the Dead, and you just sit here in this spot in your house. Do not move from this spot. And they do this Buddhist ritual where they paint on all over his entire body, head to toe, with Sanskrit passages from, I think it might be from the Book of the Dead, or maybe from another Buddhist tome. I wrote it down somewhere. But anyway, so all these symbols are just all over his body, except for his ears. And what's interesting is like the ghost samurai shows up, and it's an amazing effect where like the samurai is now, he's a ghost, but he is now fully, he starts off being translucent, and then once he gets in, he's fully corporeal. It seems like you can't see through him anymore.
Yeah,
but Hiroshi is transparent like a ghost in his world, except for his ears, because the symbols were supposed to make him invisible to the ghost. And then the ghost just sees his ears just floating. And he's like, well, I guess I better bring something back. Yank! Off come his ears.
And violent. It's violent, too.
It is brutal, because you see him suffer, and he can't do anything about it. It's terrible. I was about to say, like, the only other movie I can think of that even shows will-o-wisps this much is Brave, Pixar movie.
Brave.
Yes, Brave. But yeah, so like, thankfully Hiroshi doesn't bleed to death. He just they bandage him up, but I have to say, like, of all the protagonists in these stories, I feel like Hiroshi gets off the easiest. He doesn't die or get possessed or live a life of eternal servitude or anything. He loses his ears, but at least it kind of leaves, there's sort of an ambiguous ending at the end where another group of nobles comes to hear him play, because ever since this incident, for whatever reason, Hiroshi has now become famous.
Yes, he becomes famous, and because all the nobles still come to hear him play, he becomes rich. They say that in the narration, he becomes rich, a very wealthy man. And that's like, this is the only story that has like after all the violence this blind guy goes through, he like goes to hell and back again, and he becomes famous, and he becomes wealthy. It's such an odd way to end the story when you didn't. Yeah.
And it's funny too, because this, especially the 3-hour version, this one is the most lighthearted of all of the stories. It actually has humor in it that's funny. Like Hirochi's two idiot friends who find him and they dress up in like Lord Raiden hats from Mortal Kombat and stray ponchos, and and they literally do a Scooby Doo gang kind of gag where they're walking around looking for spooks, and they bump backwards into each other and go, ah! They literally do a Scooby Doo thing in this movie.
Yes, they
So
do.
like, what?
Yes, they do. I noticed that too.
Like in this high-minded, high art, art film, we have Scooby-Doo gags in this thing. So yeah, I mean, he gets off pretty well, but there's also this feeling, this ambiguous question of, I wonder if these nobles are real, because at this point, the line between the supernatural and the real world is blended so much that there's a question of whether or not Hiroshi is now playing for another set of ghosts.
I would have
Another,
thought that too if not for the narration.
yeah, but because I think, and again, I think that now that I think about it, I think that plays into the political allegory of it too, because it's the idea of here we've gotten rid of one set of tyrannical rulers, and now we just have another set.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah. So now, that's what it was. That's what was written on him. It's called the Heart Surah. It is a single, most commonly recited and copied study of scripture in Eastern Asian Buddhism. It includes a summary of the doctrine of the two truths, which means that all reality is emptiness. That your reality isn't real. Just in the sense of that, it's basically like the idea of like what Jim Carrey says when he says, like, I'm not really me. There is no real me. He's talking about that, the illusory nature of the material world in Chinese Buddhism.
Huh.
So plays right into the themes of this movie. It's a very Buddhist movie in many ways.
Yeah, I can see that. I didn't think about that when we were watching it, but
yeah. So in a cup of tea, like we said before, the most creepy, the most unsettling, and also the most baffling.
Yes, the most
of all the stories.
Since I watched the 2-hour 45-minute version and not the longer version, which I guess features the longer version of this segment.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot more sense in the 3-hour version. So, ladies and gentlemen, do watch that version of it, please. Otherwise, you're going to be a little confused. You might still be a little bit confused because the ending of this one is very left up to your interpretation. It's also probably the most J horror of all of them. You can see some like the angry ghost, the cursed object, like all of those motifs play heavily into modern J horror, and they're right here in a cup of tea. It starts with a set. Oh, by the way, it's also noteworthy that it prominently says this is set in the year 1900. So it seems like the stories have thus far progressed in time, starting from like the Middle Ages and working their way gradually forward to now we're almost in the modern day. But it's also like we're in the modern day because this story is a very meta ghost story. It's a story about a writer, ostensibly, and the idea of the fragmentary stories.
Yes.
The narration kind of speculates about certain stories that are fragments that have no ending, and speculates as to why they might be. And one of the speculations is maybe the writer died while writing it. So
interesting for this one.
Yeah, interesting for this one, isn't it? So this is definitely, and that, of course, that text is taken straight from Lafcadio Hearn's book. And the story that follows, I'm pretty sure that the samurai portion of this story is all that's in Lafcadio Hearn's book.
Oh, you
the wraparound with the writer was added by the screenwriter, and it gives an ending to otherwise a story that has no ending. It just abruptly ends. But there's a lot of stories like that in folklore, but Lafcadio Hearn decided to collect them anyway, because why not? So this story is basically about a writer trying to write a ghost story, And the story itself is about a big dumb samurai who gets impatient, waiting for his master to get out of his house that they're waiting for. He's waiting with the other samurai dudes. So he goes in and basically steals some water from some random guy's house, like you do when you're hot. But there's a ghost in the cup of water. And according to the commentary, the face in Hearn's story is described as a handsome but also feminine male face. It is threatening but beguiling at the same time.
Interesting.
So they had a really tough time casting the right actor for it, but the guy they chose got the job because his smile is so eerie.
And yes, and in that cup of tea, when he's looking up at the main guy, it's like it is very eerie. It's kind of off-putting.
Yeah. And in the 3-hour version, he doesn't seem as stupid. Like he throws the cup away after the first time, and then he goes back to it and puts the water in, and he thinks, oh, that was a weird thing. But then, oops, it's back. Oh crap, what's going on now? And like there's more business, a little bit more of a beat where he finally takes the plunge and drinks the cup of tea, and implication is that he drinks the ghost, question mark?
Yeah, that's what I thought. But it's a weird because he drops it several times before he actually like he wants to make sure he's seeing what he's seeing, and then he just drinks it. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Wouldn't you not drink it if you're still seeing someone's ghost in your drink?
Well, I think the idea is, and I think the idea is that the guy's face is beguiling. Like there's almost a hypnosis going on, and this plays into and this is really much more prevalent in the 3-hour version. This plays into the theme of homosexuality that's in this story. I think there's a reason why they cast a male actor as the ghost who is handsome and feminine looking and beguiling at the same time, like a seducing kind of spirit. Okay. And so in the 3-hour version, so he drinks the water and then he has guard duty in the castle the night after. And in the 3-hour version, he's walking around the castle and he sees the ghost that he drank. He just materializes by this big loom. And the ghost shows up and you don't recognize him. The ghost talks to the guy, talks to the dumb samurai. I always call him Dumb Samurai from now on because I don't know his name. But he talks to him, he's like, you don't recognize me? And the ghost is like, you did me great harm. And he's like, I don't know who you are. And they attacks him. And his blade passes through him. But yet the ghost acts as if he got stabbed by the guy. And then he fades into the shadow of a clock. And which is very Mask of the Red Death. Because there's a big clock in Mask of the Red Death in the Black Room representing the time is running out kind of thing. That death is near. And of course, none of that is in the 2.5-hour version. And then in the regular 2-hour version, it goes right to the next scene, where, oh, by the way, in the 3-hour version, you also find out that this big dumb samurai has a home life. He lives with his mom and dad.
Yes.
And he's playing this game with fans with some beautiful woman, but I thought it was a prostitute at first, but no, it's his sister. And he's still up, and they're at night, and then all of a sudden, like, someone knocks on the door, and he's like, "Someone here for you." And he goes, and there are 3 in the courtyard of his house. There are 3 ghosts in big Raiden Mortal Kombat hats, and they said, "We are the 3 retainers of Lord So and So." And basically, you've done him great harm, and now you have to fight him. And you'll see him tomorrow. He's like, no way, I'm not having this. So he attacks the ghosts. And with cool editing, and great stuff with time and pacing and sound effects, he makes this really Kobayashi makes this really cool sequence that ends in just with the guy basically going insane and laughing in our face. And this sequence especially, this was the sequence that I wanted to just rip off, straight rip off. Because it was one of the things that's cool about it is that in this version, it's like the laws of time and space and physics are don't make sense anymore when a human being encounters the supernatural in the world of this movie. So, like, there's like time lapse, there's sound that's out of sync again, and that's what all that is about. And the fact that he keeps killing them and they keep coming back, and they're just like they're everywhere. And so that's what all that is about. And I wanted to do something with my anthology that I planned except it was a medieval knight. And he goes and he sends his ghost squires after this guy. And the same thing would have happened where time and space are warped and he just can't kill these guys. My version had an ending though. But yeah, I completely forgotten all about that script until I saw this movie again. I was like, wow, I was all gonna do that, and I never did. And I'm like, oh, it gave me a little mini existential crisis. Actually, it really did. So anyway, he goes insane, and that's where the story ends.
It's an odd ending. It's an odd ending.
Yeah, and the narrator says so. He's like, and that is the end. That's where it stops. Again, could the writer have died while writing it? I don't know. And it goes down to, I think at some point, like we see a letter from the guy. So we're back in 1900, okay? And the publisher guy comes to the writer's house, and he's wished Happy New Year by people. So it's like, this is the turn of the century. The modern era has started, basically. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. But he goes in this guy's house and he sees the writer's wife. And his wife's like, well, I haven't seen him all day. Yep. He's just in his room writing. I haven't seen him all day. He just goes there like he's freaking in a cave. I don't know what he does. So he's like, well, may I see if he's finished the story? I've been waiting for it. It's like, sure. So he goes into the guy's office and he finds the writer's writing. And it says, I can't think of an ending that would satisfy you. So you make one. Was this perhaps a final act of creative defiance or an attempt to lure him to the basin of water? Because in the middle of this house, and there's a little spot lamp on the top of this basin of water. His wife goes to fill up some more tea from that water basin and screams and runs out. And the publisher sees her run out, and he goes to the basin, and he screams and runs for his frickin' life. And then the second to last shot of the movie is you with an overhead shot,
yep.
seeing what's in that basin, and I won't spoil it for you.
You know what?
That's terrifying.
Let's not spoil that for people who have not seen the film already.
Yeah, but like what you've seen in there makes you like question everything you saw before. You're like, wait a minute, what's that? What? Now the last shot, kind of without saying anything, I think tells you what happened, especially if you see the story that the writer was writing as allegorical, perhaps, of his own experience. But yeah, so that's what it says. So interestingly, like I said, this movie was not a success. In fact, it bankrupted the movie studio that made it.
Did it really?
Yes, according to the Criterion Collection things, they spent way too much money on this. They never made another lavish color film again, and Kobayashi never made one either. Oh. In fact, while he was shooting, that's what I was trying to say. The studio sent a watchdog to see if they could like deliver the film on time. In fact, they were trying to do a thing where if the budget was skyrocketing past 60 million yen, they would just cut one of the stories and save money that way.
Wow.
If they ran out of time, they would just take what was made and release it, which, by the way, I have thought of that as a strategy for an independent, anthology horror movie. You just shoot the stories that you want to shoot. If you run out of money, well, just say, okay, that's it. We're done. And it's like, you can't shoot the rest of them. Okay, fine. Just release it as is.
Oh, Jesus.
And with an anthology, you could do that. But like eventually Kobayashi, he saw the watchdog there, and basically what he did was he showed him the dailies, and it impressed him so much that the watchdog was like, yeah, no, let him go. So he convinced him, and they gave him I think that's what it says here is that they gave him 6 million yen per story. And eventually the studio gave him 100 million yen, which is about $622 million, give or take, which, if you adjust for inflation, it would probably be about $5,220 in today's money.
Wow.
Huh. And it bombed.
Yeah, and also the time period, a lot of foreign films like that also didn't make their way over here either. So I can see, I can see that.
Yeah. There is something kind of eerie, too, in a way that I can't describe. Like, since it is a story of a writer and a writer writing something that he never finishes. So I feel like Kobayashi's career is that. Because after this movie, he made a few other low budget dramas that were well received, but he never achieved the same heights with Kwaidan or even The Human Condition before that. So, yeah, it's kind of sad, but...
Did you read anything about whether or not this was a passion project movie of his?
No, this was kind of a director for hire thing. They wanted to make an adaptation of this book, but like I said, I think he, as a social realist, saw the material at probably first thought, I don't think I can do this, but then realized, oh no, I can use this as an art piece that I could use this to express my political, my social, my spiritual ideas in a way that looks totally different from what I've done, but yet it's very much me. So like he just wanted to branch out as an artist. He probably fell in love with the material as he was writing it, but no, this was a director for hire thing. But that just goes to show you guys, you don't have to, you can take anything that's given to you if you just find the end and make it yours. And then it becomes your passion project.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way that a lot of the great directors of the studio system approached movies.
Oh, yeah.
Because every movie during the studio system was a director for hire thing. There was no such thing as passion projects back in the, the 40s and 50s. No. But guys like Howard Hawks and the other guy who's really big, Preston.
All of them back in that time, they were all work for hire, and then of course you could see some of their personality come through when they had their own ideals that they were able to get into the movies.
Exactly. That's just the way that they approached the task of directing. They didn't see themselves as artists, but they made art with the commerce that they were given, It doesn't matter what genre they were given either. If it was Westerns, my goodness, they would just make these Westerns with like political and social issues underneath them, and they would put their idea, or low budget sci-fi movies. My goodness, so many of those, especially the Corman ones, were very like pro-science, progressive ideas, all those things that he made because they were money makers, like we've talked about Corman before, chasing trends, but yet every time he would always let the directors put their point of view in it. So it's just, it's very much in step with the kind of ethos of the artist who makes art for the masses. And then whatever it is, he makes it his own.
Yeah.
And speaking of his own, I tried my best to have a Schwarzenegger alternator for this. and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't figure out a way to sneak him in. Maybe this movie's too high-minded for this Schwarzenegger.
I think it's kind of like the last one we did, in which we were, what was it, Black Sabbath, which was an anthology film. Anthology films are kind of hard to do, I guess, with the short.
I guess. Although I did think of like a few other things for the decapitation scene for Schwarzenegger Alternator. Some of them are really bad. Like, I hear you give good head. Now let me have yours. But it's really awful. But no, I think actually the bleakometer might be good for this too, because in the last for those of you who haven't listened to the Black Sabbath one, which I'm sure will come out before this does.
Yes.
But yeah, I invented a thing called like the "How bleak is it?" meter, which is from 1 to measures movies or stories in this case from 1 to 5 in measure of bleakness. Like 1 being like, I guess, Care Bears, and 5 being Hereditary.
Hereditary. I was about to say the same one.
Hereditary or Martyrs, basically. It's like the bleakest of the bleak. So I'm going
to say this is a 3 for me. If it hadn't been for how the E.T. the Earless ended, I would say a little bit bleaker. Because that's one of my favorites of this stuff, and that one isn't nearly as bleak, even though it's got more blood in it than all the other ones. Like, it's kind of a weird one because it's got a lot more of the blood in it, and so you would think it would be bleaker, but it really isn't when you hear that E.T. has become famous and rich.
Although he's a Buddhist monk, what is he going to do with money?
I know.
He's just gonna give it to the temple anyway.
You made me think about that when we said it out loud. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He works for a temple. He doesn't care about money.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna agree with you. I think overall this is a 3 out of 5 in bleakness, which is probably not Hereditary per se, but it's more of like I guess what movie would we say is also like that people have seen is probably also a 3 on the bleakness scale?
I don't know. I might have to come up with a reference for this one since we haven't done it nearly as much as just rating the movie overall. So
yeah, it's definitely not The Coffee Table. That would be like a 4 out of 5. Have you seen The Coffee Table yet?
No, but it's on Shudder now, so I need to watch it now.
I watched it when it was on Tubi for free, so y'all got to pay for it.
I didn't know it was on Tubi, so I guess I'll have to watch it on Tubi then.
I don't think it's on Tubi anymore. I think they had a limited license with it before Shudder picked it up. So you snooze, you lose, bud.
Oh well, I have Shudder, so I'm not worried about it too much.
That's okay. You know what? Some people, I watched it with commercials, obviously, because Tubi. But like some people, like this guy, my friend of mine said that he could not get through The Coffee Table in one sitting because it was so upsetting to him and so bleak that like the commercials helped him. Like when the commercials came on, he took a break.
Okay. All right.
I mean, The Coffee Table is not long. It's only like 95 minutes, but like it took him 3 days to finish it.
All right. Oh shit.
And speaking of rating, what do we rate this masterpiece of cinema?
You're going first in this one. What do you want to rate it?
Well, I feel like there's so many things you could take from this movie. So many objects that are cursed and haunted and otherwise strange. I feel like his cup of tea is my favorite of the segments, especially the 3-hour version. I'm gonna rate this with cups of tea, haunted cups of tea with a vaguely with a smiling ghost with a vaguely feminine looking face in it. So I'm gonna rate it 5 cups of tea out of 5. It's a masterpiece.
Okay. I probably need to give it a few more. I need to watch the actual 3-hour version. You've seen that one, but I need to watch that one. I probably might give it a higher rating. But I'm going to give it right now, because I haven't seen the 3-hour version. I'm going to give it 4 pairs of detached ears.
Oh, that's good. 4 pairs.
Dude, I love when you do these, man. I was waiting to say that one.
4 pairs of severed ears, yes.
All right.
So you know what? So that means that we can't do that same rating system for if we ever do Blue Velvet. because that's also got a severed ear in it that defines the movie.
We'll have to put Blue Velvet. I think that needs to be on our list, but I don't think it's on our list right now. You're the first person to mention Blue Velvet. Lynch's movies don't get added to the list. That I think Lost Highway may be the only one that's on the list. Oh no,
Yeah.
Twin Peaks is on there.
I mean, Eraserhead should be on there. It's the only one that IMDb actually lists as horror.
Eraserhead should be on there. I need to rewatch that one so I can fully digest that one.
I don't think anybody fully digests Eraserhead, no matter how many times you watch it.
And I'm a David Lynch fan. I need to rewatch that one. All right. So I want to thank you, Thomas, for joining us on this conversation about Kwaidan. I love doing the anthology films, and I hope that we get to do more of them, especially highlighting. At some point this year, we're going to do a month highlighting anthology films because the horror genre has a lot of anthology films. And so it's going to be a good exercise to get through some of the ones that people are familiar with, as well as some that people aren't familiar with. So I'm hoping people listen to this one and will seek this movie out, because I know this is more obscure in terms of our horror films that we talk about, and it's probably more obscure than some of our listeners who haven't delved deep into the well that is Japanese horror, which is extensive and amazing with the offerings that they have.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so with that, make sure that you check out new episodes of the show every Wednesday at 8 a.m. We normally might do a special episode on Mondays, but our show is normally released every Wednesday, 8 a.m. on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, or on YouTube. You can find us all those different places. Make sure to check us out on social media for our upcoming schedules for new episodes, as well as check out some of the older episodes where we may have delved into some of your favorite films out there. From all of us at Something Wicked Entertainment, have a pleasant day and keep watching those horror films.
Sayonara.
Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.